Welcome to Curiosities of Teaching and Learning, a podcast hosted and produced by the Collaborative for Teaching and Learning, a change maker in education since 1994.
Hi, welcome to the podcast series, Crushing COVID in the Virtual Classroom, brought to you by the Collaborative for Teaching and Learning in Louisville, Kentucky. It is our hope that through this podcast, we elevate the voices of teachers all over the country as we hear their stories about how they are responding to these unparalleled times in teaching and learning. My name is Ashley Perkins, and I am your host today. And I am joined by my friend, Dr. Lee Green.
Hello, Doctor.
Hello, Doctor.
Doctor.
Lee and I met in 2012, I believe.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, we both started the doctorate program together in school improvement. I did an emphasis in reading. Lee, I don't know, what was your emphasis?
Instructional technology.
Instructional technology. Well, that makes sense. Wanted to point out that we're both rocking really cool shirts today. So I'm in Kentucky, and our governor's message is we can get through this together. So I'm wearing that one, and Lee wants us to trust him because.
Yes, I could change this to a plural, I guess. Make it more inclusive. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Yeah, this was present whenever I finished the old dissertation.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you, Lee, seriously, for taking the time to do this. Just like my last guest, Donnie Piercy, you are wearing lots of hats right now. You're a dad to a 3-year-old and a 12-year-old.
Well, yep, 4 and 12, but yeah.
4 and 12, and a dad to a cat.
Yeah.
And Alice. And you're also helping support those two while also supporting your own students. So I know you're super busy, so I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Happy to be here. It's a different world right now where we're not only wearing lots of hats, but trying to figure out how they fit. And where do we hang one hat up and then put the other hat on whenever it's time to do one thing. And I've seen some stories from some teachers saying, it never ends right now. Like formally, and really the life of a teacher doesn't, like there's not a clean line. Okay, at 3:30 I'll clock out and I'll walk out the door. That's not really how it works. But one guy I saw on the, I think the teacher's subreddit said, I wake up, I get out of bed, I go to the desk that's in the next room, I sit down there, I'm on the computer from this time until this time, and then I'm still fielding phone calls, text messages, everything else, because again, people are confused, unsure of what to do, how to do, when to do, when to do. And yeah, it's definitely a balancing act moving into or dealing with what we're dealing with right now.
Absolutely. So that's part of why we're doing this series, is so that we can just hear from people across the country and how they are dealing and responding, and just get like little nuggets of truths and gems from you as you tell your story. So tell us about you. Give us part of your story.
So let's see, talking about hats, I've worn a bunch. I've been a special education teacher, middle school level, social studies, computer business, middle school computer lab teacher. I've been worked at the county office level doing instructional technology, which is what I was doing when I finished my doctorate. I served as a director of technology, and I don't know, a couple years ago, I had what would I consider a couple in a in a string of midlife crises, where I was like, what am I doing? I want to go back to the classroom. And an opportunity presented itself. And about 3-4 years ago, an opportunity popped up at our local college and career academy to start teaching, what has eventually evolved into teaching game design. In addition to teaching game design, what led me into game design was the esports phenomenon that has sprung up across the country. For those of you not familiar, that is competitive video gaming at the high school level. You take the same kids that could be playing football, baseball, basketball, soccer, whatever, and you turn them loose in a virtual arena to compete against other high schools for glory of various kinds. So I was doing a web design / entrepreneurial style program, and I started doing esports, and I altered my pathway because in the CTAE world, we do pathways. Same way you have welding, which will be a progression of welding classes. I have game design, which is a progression of game design classes. So you learn intro to technology, computer science basics, preferably around the world of game design. And then we launch into the game design engine to prep for that. But esports led me down that pathway because a lot of kids, if you don't know this, a lot of kids are interested in video games.
And adults.
Yes, and adults. It's never really been a passion of mine. It's kind of growing out of this. Like, I'm looking more at the aesthetic of the game now than I would be at the actual, like, oh, this is too hard, my brain doesn't understand it. I'm kind of delving into a couple of things. And again, having a 12-year-old that's prime age for, she loves the almost said role-playing games, Zelda. I wouldn't quite count that as an RPG. But watching those sort of intricate sort of things happen, even though my attention would be exhausted trying to play that, but I can sit and I can watch that game being played, and I kind of get into the storyline of it, and I'm looking at the artwork, and like, oh, I kind of know how that was made now, and I can kind of go show my kids, like, hey, let's dissect this little piece of grass here and talk about the code that goes into that. So so I'm doing, yes, many hats have been worn. I'm really happy with the hat that I have on right now.
Nice. So I know that you live in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
You are teaching in a rural community.
Mm-hmm.
You told me about 9,000.
Yeah. We've got all together, there's 4 high schools, 4 middle schools, probably, I'm going to get it wrong because I always do, 8 or 9 elementary, and our college and career academy. We serve all 4 high schools. So the way that students come to us, starting their sophomore year, they come for a visit and they look at all the different programs and they say, ooh, I like that one. Ooh, I like that one. Ooh, I like that one. And we try to give them a program they want. So they might make a list of like top 3. And then, their junior year, they come back and they start the program progression to throughout their senior year. So they'll take 4 classes with us. So with me anyway, they'll take 4 classes over the 2 years with me. Plus, they'll also do their junior and senior level math and science. One of the cooler things I didn't bring up in discussing earlier, because we're 4 smaller high schools that kind of feed into the CCA can offer some programming that we can't really offer at the smaller home schools because we can kind of put them all in there. And so as we're at each individual school, say, for example, there might be a few kids at each school that want to do forensics. And since that wouldn't quite be enough to make a class, by pulling them together, we can offer those, maybe, let's say, more specialty science and math classes that we could do in other places.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you service 2 schools in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 schools in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And how many kids do you see a day?
Now the program has grown to, per day. Let's see. I have about 80 in my program right now. And it kind of varies because I've been growing this program and making some adaptations to get it to where it is now. My junior classes on their day, I have, let's say 25 and 23, I believe. And then my senior classes, I have 20 and 12. So we have them for blocks. We see them for about 3 hours at a time. So really feeds well into programs like welding and construction, where you're doing longer projects that could take, that you need to invest more time in. So they've set the CTAE blocks to go a little bit longer.
So when kids graduate from your program, typically, and I know this is an atypical year.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
we'll talk about that. What would this time of year look like for your students?
So right now, for the juniors, let's see what class we're in right now. We're in the computer science class, so we're getting together the framework of what the code is. It looks like it goes into game design before we start going into the game design engine itself. So we'd be brushing up on our C# and making sure that we understood the basic commands in that, how to make the characters move, because it's the code that goes into it that makes them move. It'd be really cool if like it was the ability to just hit a button and then make it articulate this little finger right here. But no, there's probably about 100 lines of code that go into that right there. So we're figuring that out and trying to wrap our brains around that. For my seniors, we would be prepping for our end of pathway exam. So the third class in the progression for the seniors is the game design class itself. And that, yes, at this time of year now, because we just got into this program and I've advanced my seniors through the game design stuff, we'd be prepping for that exam. It's a certification on a program called Unity, and they would leave with a Unity Certified Developer Certificate, which, and again, until I got into this world, I had no idea what that meant. But if you think of any computer-generated CGI sort of things, there's something like Unity there behind it. So it's not only used for video games, which is a big use of it, but any sort of graphic animation, interactive worlds, that sort of thing. And that now goes into AR, VR, you name it. There's a component that Unity hits in a lot of different entertainment design sort of fields.
So unfortunately, you're not able, under these circumstances, to continue with school looking and feeling that way.
Right.
For students. I know one of the things that we talked about was the real kind of heartache that you were experiencing for your seniors who may or may not get to take this exam at this point. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So I've got a group of really dedicated kids that have gone in there and figured this out, and a lot of them have surpassed my abilities in the platform. Again, I call it squishy brain versus hard brain. I've got a hard brain. I think the cup's almost full at this point, and there's a squishy and malleable, and they're getting all kind of stuff worked into those cracks and crevices up there. But yeah, so they've worked really hard to advance in this platform and really figure it out. And I'm not gonna say, oh, they all have it perfectly, no, but there's definitely some that I know would love to have that certification under their belts as a stepping stone to move forward. I've probably got, out of my seniors, and I think like around 30 of them, a few are progressing on to some larger universities and going to study game design. And that would be and obviously the university is going to teach them additional things and show them, better ways, more ways to kind of do those things. But it would look nice for them. And if you jumped into Indeed, the job search place, and just typed in Unity Certified Developer and started looking at salaries, and yeah, if you've got a 2-year associates and some computer science background with a couple of certifications from Unity, you're setting yourself up quite nicely for a good career in a lot of different places. There's thousands of jobs out there that are looking for people that have that skill set to be able to do the graphics generation and the game design, and yeah, there's an opportunity there that we're kind of missing out on, and yeah, I feel bad for them because again, my nerds, my stallions, as I call them, each one more impressive than the last. I know several of them are going into that field, and really in tech, it's certifications are just as, and I'm not, denigrating college or anything, but certifications are just as, if not more important than a degree. You can string together several certifications and spend a fraction of the money that you would for college. And as long as you know how to do what it is you're doing, people that go to work at your Googles, your Apples, your places like that, the person sitting next to you is like, oh, where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to school? It's really, can you sit down and crank out the code and get the job done? And so that makes me sad.
Yeah, I could hear it in your voice when we did our pre-interview, and just we're talking, your disappointment for them.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you said to me, I wrote it down, you said when school finally, or the state, decided in Georgia to close, right, for the remainder of the year, you said one of the things that you thought about is you can do time or time can do you.
Yeah, it kind of comes from prison. Like people have gone to prison before that decide that they can, you're sitting there, you've got time on your hands. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to dedicate it to making yourself better? Again, using the prison analogy, are you going to go get that law degree? There's like 4 shows every year that come out about some guy who's tried to do something like that. Or are you going to fall into bad habits and do things that aren't going to help you become better? And so, in I've tried to exemplify that myself, and I've mentioned to you that sometimes I have days where I want to curl up in a corner and say, "What the heck is going on?" and I'm not quite sure what's happening. Or um, on the opposite side of that, I will try to make sure, okay, I'm going to get up. I'm going to accomplish X, Y, and Z today to make myself better for my students in the future, make things better for my students right now, help out my kids, help out some people close to me. What are some different things I can do to try to advance and grow during this time where, and again, this is in no way analogous to being incarcerated, but you're kind of sitting there. Like we are being told to sit. We're shelter in place. Like we're being told to kind of let's write it out and wait it out and kind of do those things. And yeah, it's it's different when you thought it like, and again, going into this, I don't think anybody could really guess exactly what was going to happen. But the beginning, like, okay, 2 days, this is what we're going to do when we get back to school in 2 days. Okay. All right. Now it's 2 weeks. Okay. This is what's going to happen when we get back in 2 weeks. Okay. Now it's going to be 6 months before we can kind of get back in there. So how are you able to take advantage of that time and make sure that you're continuing to grow? And for my children really, because the 4-year-old is just as into video games now as the 12-year-old is. um, how are you going to do more than just play video games for 24 hours a day? um, how are you going to find that thing that kind of scratches that itch in your brain that kind of helps you to kind of keep getting better at whatever it is you decide you want to get better at? And so yeah, things like that. You can do the time, or the time can do you. What are you going to do with that time while you have it?
Yeah, and that leads me to you. You said so many great things. You said I can be proactive or be paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said you kind of had this aha where you realized that you were going to have to flip the script because your kids, let's talk about that tequity.
Yeah.
And what devices would have been required for your students to keep doing school as normal, but at home.
Right.
And how you flipped the script.
So for game design, and let me back up. I'm Google fanboy, Mr. Google. I'll wave their banner all day long. I love Chromebooks. A Chromebook will do 90% of what 90% of the people need to do with a computer, and it's just a better way to go about things. Finally convinced my 74-year-old father to pick one up, and yeah, I'm having to provide remote tech support for him also. But at least we're hopping on there, and we'll hop on one of these, and then I can see his screen. Anyway, so Chromebook's great. That's our device of choice, again, because it hits most of the requirements of what you need a computer for. But for game design, you need a computer that's got some power to it. You need something that's got a dedicated graphics card. You need enough RAM. You need, just more than what you get in a Chromebook, $150 Chromebook. Well, the computers I was able to get not only to use for game design, but also for esports. On average, that machine is about $1,000, altogether. And for game design, there's some things that you can do in a Chromebook, some of the rudimentary stuff, but even for getting into something to try to write some code to, again, make that little pinky move, you don't have enough there to be able to do that. So in the beginning, when I thought we were coming back, I was focused on review, prepping them for the in the pathway, making sure that they were doing more to get ready and things along those lines. And then when the plug was finally pulled, I went to something a little bit different, in that, that you can do the time and the time can do you piece really kind of stuck in my brain and said, okay, what are some things my students can do to advance themselves? And that I found several. I'm a big fan of the massive online open courses, MOOCs through Udacity and Coursera and edX and a couple different places. And there's a course there for anything you want to do. And so I took some of them, or I showed them that and said, okay, I'm cool with you finding one of these and updating yourself on that, updating you on that. If you start a course, tell me what it's like. If you decide you don't like it, find another one. There's thousands of them out there. Work on your art. If you have the ability to do game design, here's the codes and everything you need to download some things. And so I've moved it from I'm asking you specifically to produce A, B, or C to I'm asking you to produce. I'm asking you to find your thing, find something that you're passionate about and interested in, and that you can learn and grow with and make yourself better in that. So if that thing is art, show me your art. If that thing is, I want to learn how to build a shelf for my room, show me a shelf for your room. If that thing is, I've got one student who, she's a junior, one of the, one of the few females in game design, because it's a typically male generated field. But she is close to getting her Eagle Scout badge as one of the few females in the state of Georgia to kind of go through that. So she's working on that and kind of reporting back to me some things that she's progressed on in building out there. So it's more, and here's the cool part about it. It's designed for them. It's focused on them. But for me, in looking at games and how games are built and designed, it's all personal experiences. Like the best games you can think of have the story aspect of it, of somebody who's delved into something and can kind of grow with it and can kind of bring a little bit of who they are, what they are into the story and kind of make it more engaging. So if I have somebody who's that artist who likes pen and paper, all right, how do we then take that pen and paper and put it into a thing that we can then move down to a plane to go interact with another character and to do something there? So I can roundabout bring it all back to my content area, pretty much anything, even if it's music. I've got some students that are like incredible producers of music, mainly digitally. And okay, we can use that in some game design. We can bring that into something. So I'm still able to tie it back to my curriculum, but I'm less concerned about that than I am about my student being engaged just a little bit. And we're not asking for a ton. If you're going to play video games for 24 hours a day, okay, let's back 45 minutes off of that, play for 23:15, and just spend some time working on you and working on making yourself more better. And that's a doctor saying that too, by the way, more better.
I really liked when we talked, you were telling me kind of what inspired this passion project vision for you.
Yeah.
You talked about some podcasts that you follow. So maybe just share out about your inspiration.
So part of my midlife crisis, for the career midlife crisis, let's call it that. Part of my career midlife crisis, Don Wettrick. He is a gentleman that hosts a podcast called Start Ed Up. Don is based up in Indiana, and somehow I heard, I was listening to one podcast and they mentioned Don, and then I found Don and started listening to him. And he was teaching a class at the time called Innovation in Open Source Learning, where he would pull in, it was an elective class at his high school, and students would sign up and they would just come in and work on whatever motivated them. I'm not shy, so I hit Don up on the Twitter and said, hey, I'll be coming through Indiana. Can I stop by and say hi, come see your class? I'm interested in starting something like this up. And so I went and checked it out, and his kids there, the class that I went in on, he had one student that was building a school in Africa and about to graduate early so he could move to Africa to go facilitate the school. One student had taken over the social media aspect for the pizza place he worked at in town, and he was, getting customers to come in saying, hey, free drink with purchase of a slice, and he was designed Snapchat filters to go up on that. If you showed that filter, then you got to come in and get that coupon. And so, and everything in between that. So from, literally building a school to, hey, I'm just going to try to generate revenue for my job. And it was some really cool stuff. And the evolution of my course from trying to start something like that up, and I had to have a pathway because CTAE there's no CTAE pathway for innovation and open source learning. So I went the web design route. And through the process of attempting to grow that, also because of Don, found out about the thing called esports. He interviewed Rick Fox from the Lakers, who's a major esports owner. And yeah, so through that process, so really I'm taking a step back into what I was initially trying to do by providing that opportunities for that self-directed learning and giving it, at least right now, giving it back to them. And I do think there's a space for that really in every class. I mean, you could hear it called different things, 20% time. That was something Google used to do to give employees theirs 20% of the time to work on whatever they want to work on. And we got things like, Gmail out of that. Like, so yeah, it's a really, really cool thing. For my students though, and what kind of engaged them a little bit more, when I'm talking to kids and they say, okay, what is this class and this pathway you're doing? There's a dissertation explanation to explain innovation and open source learning to them, as where there's a paragraph explanation to explain game design. And that as soon as I say game design, like kids like me, I was like, okay. And so that led to the switching gears. But yeah, the stuff with Don, I can't say enough good stuff about his podcast and stuff that he's done. He really lives that, okay, how are we going to get the most out of today? How are we going to engage people, and how are we going to push them to kind of go out and achieve some things they may not know? How are we going to build those relationships and kind of connect with kids and connect kids to other things to kind of help them grow and become better at whatever it is that they may decide they want to be. So I'm a huge fan of that man. Yeah. So.
And, what I think it's for people who are listening in on this, it doesn't take a lot. Like you told me, you use Google Docs, Google Meet, Google Voice.
Yeah.
You have a feedback form you send to students. So anyone can do this kind of approach if they're looking for ways to, like you said, engage students right now.
Mm-hmm.
Motivate students, right?
Yeah, because I don't have to be this. I can't. Well, yeah, that's not that I don't have to be. I can't be the subject area expert on everything that they're trying to do.
Right.
But I can look at it with a critical eye and say, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? I've got some experience, and I'll read one thing and say, oh, I know this person that does this. Can I connect you with them? How can we grow that? And honestly, some are hits and some are misses and some are somewhere in between. But it's more, to me, it's about, I don't know, I told this to my 12-year-old the other day. I really don't, I want you to be a good person and I want you to be curious. Like if we can check those two boxes in your development as a human being, I think you're probably going to be okay. If you're kind to others and you're willing to ask questions and go learn things and figure out things that are outside of your comfort area, kind of say, okay, what is this thing and why did this happen this way? If we can do some things right now to assist in piquing that curiosity, then yeah, we can get something out of this. Like we can take this time and again, do the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing we didn't mention about you, you yourself are super curious, and mm-hmm. you have decided to go back to school.
Yes.
So in the midst of all of this, you yourself are also a student again.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes. Now I'm working on my computer science endorsement because my background is not it's not in code. Like honestly, I know how to use Google Sheets and I can do a couple of formulas in there. But when I started my doctorate, I kind of flipped a coin and I said, okay, I'd done my specialist and I had that in instructional technology. And I was sitting there and I had some really critical conversations with several people. I was looking at going in for computer science at the time, or I was going to go do my dissertation and do my doctorate and go that route. And, it was probably more practical for me to do a doctorate than I think it was to go the computer science route, because there was no, as a teacher, like one of the things, degrees and increments and steps and everything kind of helps you out in the long term. Little did I know, several years after I finished my doctorate, I would be teaching game design and I would need to know computer science. And so Yeah, I'm in a program right now, and I'm going to throw this person out there because he is amazing. And I just look at him, and his brain just kind of blows me away. And he's an excellent teacher. His name is Bucky Bush. Yep, that's his name, Bucky Bush. Um, and he's at our RISA, which is kind of like your CT. Am I saying it right? CTL?
CTO.
CTO, yeah. It's a regional education service agency. We've got about 15 or 16 of them around the state of Georgia, and he serves our area as our director of technology / computer science guru, and he's amazing. Like I'm movie reference time, Billy Madison, where the person speaking Spanish to him, and Billy just looks at him and says, "Slow down." Like, I feel that way when Bucky's talking. And yeah, it's language acquisition, man. It's language acquisition. Like I'm sitting there and I can read some of the words and understand what they mean. And like if you just gave me vocab on the things, I could tell you exactly what that is. But man, when you need me to put that into a sentence, which will be a line of code, or you need me to put that into a paragraph, which would be some blocks or some modules or something, it's like it. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm doing the computer science thing so that way I can help my students have a better understanding of what it is that goes into the Unity stuff. For my day-to-day classroom, Unity has provided us with some fantastic resources that, honestly, if game design's your jam and you have that computer that's good enough, doesn't have to be perfect, just good enough to kind of run some of this stuff. You can download a personal edition of Unity yourself, and you can go and learn.unity.com, and you can kind of take that stuff on. But what I did start seeing, though, when I started the computer science class, as I am teaching the game design stuff, like what I was just kind of looking at, if I was having to go learn French right now, I'd probably have Rosetta Stone or something like that I'm working with. But I don't have anybody to speak those things to me and say, hashtag blah, 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 for all this code that goes in there. So I was literally like looking at code on one screen, typing on another. And since being in the computer science class, even though we're not learning C#, which is a language that's used for Unity, we're doing Python now. I'm looking at those two things. I'm like, oh, like it's connections. Like it's at this. I feel really proud and also very humbled constantly in this process. But yeah, it's fun. Like I say fun. It's hard. It's really hard. But I'm enjoying it begrudgingly. I kept saying I'm not going back to school again. I'm not going back to school again. But I don't think I have a choice in that matter. I think I have to keep doing something.
Yeah, I'm there with you. So you talked about vocabulary, so that's important. That's one of the things that you and I talked about, like how are you using this passion project kind of design and model to have your kids doing reading, writing, speaking, and listening around vocabulary, right? So for example, one of the things that I know you do is like you offer up suggestions on places that they might go to read and gather information about what they're passionate about. So could you just talk to me about how literacy is kind of woven into that passion project process for your students?
Absolutely. So it's not prescribed reading. Like I'm not giving them to read pages 14 through 37 in this and give me the answers to these 6 questions. But it's that self-driven piece to where it's something they're hopefully interested in, and whatever I'm kind of referring them back to is going to kind of help drive them. And as far as feedback goes, I'm really open to them determining the type of feedback they want to give. They've got a quick little form they can fill out telling me what they've learned, what it's going to do, where it came from, who's some smart people that have done the same thing, yada, yada, yada. But at the end, they can choose to write a brief description of it. They can do an audio file, a video file, take pictures, do whatever sort of descriptive activity they would like to do to be able to help out or be able to illustrate their understanding. I learned to read really young. And I learned to read by reading wrestling magazines. Yeah, I know, right?
I'm not surprised, Lee.
Yeah. When my mom would go to the grocery store, I would go to the magazine aisle and I would camp out and I would find Pro Wrestling Illustrated and I would look at the top 10 and I would see a Sting move from number 2 to number 1. And I would devour those things. And occasionally I would get one, but I really didn't need them, like, because I would I'd be that kid sitting on the floor thumbing through them at the Ingles. Like I would do that. So if I know that's where I consider myself fairly literate, like, and if that passion was kind of inspired from that, because I wanted to know what happened with Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA that week, then I would, I know as long as you're reading something, it's probably advancing you in some way and helping you out. So I have some level of confidence in my kids. As long as they're consuming that, then they're probably doing okay. And I'm even looking at my 4-year-old right now, and the 12-year-old was playing Zelda yesterday and opened up some kit, and there was a boomerang in there, and my vision's not what it used to be, even with contacts and or glasses. But looking at the screen, Frank immediately popped up and said, "You got a boomerang." I was like, "Did you read that?" Because I could see the word boomerang was bigger than the object icon was. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I knew it was a boomerang." Like we haven't done that word. We're reading other books, but boomerang is not something that really comes up in daily conversation around here. So I'm pretty sure if you're having that opportunity and kind of consuming some things, it's probably going to help you out in some way.
That's beautiful. And I love that you give them voice and choice and how they demonstrate back to you their understanding, or you worded it, how they illustrate their understanding. I think that's really beautiful. And you also have that metacognitive piece in there where you ask them, like, what have you learned? How is that going to impact? And I really appreciate that about your design as well. We talked about in our pre-interview, like how you're staying connected to your students and how you're staying connected to your colleagues during this time when we're kind of all healthy at home.
Yeah.
So could you share that with us?
Yeah. So we've got weekly, at least, faculty meeting that we do with all staff through Google Meet, just prescribed on the calendar, and we're all there and we see each other's avatars smiling. Some of us choose to turn the cameras on and some of us don't. Like I'm typically in that, I'm just not going to turn the camera on right now. Like I'm not feeling fresh. Zoom has a really handy thing that'll clean up your appearance, and so I think I hit that button. I don't know if it makes a difference or not. Anyway, but yeah, so we'll have our weekly Google Meet meetings, and our administrator will say, "Okay, this is what's going on." Found out yesterday that one of my coworkers is having their 3rd child, so mazel tov for that. There was obvious. So what's the name going to be? 19? Like, so yeah, there's some of those. So we'll do that weekly, and then it's a lot of texting, a lot of saying, "Hey, how are you doing? I found this thing. Come check this out. I need some help with this." And I've been de facto tech support a few times for teachers, and I've used the same strategy I've used with my dad. Google used to have a cool thing that would allow you to do a screen share where it would let me take over your screen. It still exists, but it's a little bit harder to kind of set up. I've liked hopping on there with teachers and say, "Okay, do a screen share," and then let them drive, because I found that stuff sticks better when somebody drives themselves. And so I say, "Okay, you see that button down there? Go click on that one," and then I'll walk them through where to go and what to do. So I've done that and kind of tried to stay connected with them. Largely the same sort of stuff on my students as well. A couple of years ago, I created a Google Voice number, and unfortunately, I don't believe you can do that any longer. But the Google Voice number serves as a supplementary phone number, and there's other places out there you can go get one. But the Google Voice number serves as a secondary supplementary phone number on my phone. So I just walk around with it all day, and I gave that out to students at the beginning of the year, really, and said, "Hey, this is my number. I might not always respond because respect personal time, that sort of thing. But they have my phone number, and they can text me, call me, and it'll ring through, and I can have conversations with them." Got a call from a student yesterday afternoon, right before I hopped on my faculty meeting, and he was saying, "Hey, we're going to build a gaming computer for the house. What do I need? Where do I go?" And I said, "Hey, let me call you back in a minute." Called him back, and we probably had about a 45-minute conversation just about him and his well-being. So
that's great. So are the faculty meetings, are they more kind of just like checking in with each other, like that social emotional piece?
Yeah, in the beginning there was more because everything moved so quickly as far as progressing the calendar and kind of changing things up. It was more the administration team just kind of coming in and saying, "Hey, we need this, we need this, we need this." There's still that component of it, but there's always a good news part. There's always who some concerns that you may have or things that we can do to help, and it's uh it's really in this time where your immediate social circle is kind of restricted. It's really also a time to say, okay, this is what I'm struggling with. Can somebody provide a solution for this? And it's that space. And honestly, the chat window has more conversation than the verbal. In these meetings where I know people would be throwing their hands up in the air and saying, "Well, that ain't going to work that way." It's more reserved on camera. It really is. And even yeah, I try to pick and choose my times to kind of pipe up. But that chat box is always a flutter of activity. Um, so it's yesterday we got some end of the year closing procedures, and then obviously again talked about the coworkers upcoming child, and yeah, it's interesting the way that we're choosing to kind of close it out. We were given time slots to sign up for, and it's really go get your stuff and make sure they can wax. So we're no two time slots can overlap. Don't be there when you're not supposed to be there. They've done a really good job of trying to keep the buildings clear, and yeah, so
that kind of leads us, I think, to our final question in what have you learned about your students, about your colleagues, about yourself, that you want to bring back to your classroom in the fall? So just, some of your own ahas through this process.
all right, so let's start with students. And this first one kind of goes with students and on myself. The students I've spoken with more, I think we need schedules. That's a human condition. I think you need somewhere to go and something to do to kind of drive you to go to bed. The students I've spoken with, a couple of them, I know what I would have done at 18, and I'm 41 now, and I've struggled with it a few times here and there too. I'll get locked into a game of Madden, and I'm like, oh man, I'm on a winning streak right now. Look at that pass, that was awesome. Before I know it, it's 12:30, and I'm like, I should really go to bed. But yeah, I was putting some stuff out there for some students, and somebody responded was like, well, I didn't go to bed till 7 o'clock this morning. So I was like, oh yeah, you need to schedule. You need that accountability piece. I think there's some students that could do the online learning stuff and thrive with it. But that regardless, I still think there needs to be a level of structure there to try to encourage that. There's a guy, Jocko Willenick, discipline equals freedom. Because if you have that discipline kind of set up, you can allow yourself to become more free because you know what to expect and you're prepared. And again, it's odd times right now, but yeah, so the teenage brain went on summer vacation back in March, and they're having a hard time kind of reconciling with that. So students need that. I've also learned that the driven are going to drive. It wouldn't matter if I put this thing out there for them to do or not. They're still going to find that thing that they're interested in, and they're going to find a way to utilize their time for the best possible way. They're just going to, that's their MO. I could not stand in their way of accomplishing whatever it is that they're going to accomplish. And I'm really appreciative of those kids that kind of are setting the example and being those drivers that are out there. Colleagues, I've always said that teachers at different grade levels reflect the groups that they serve. The kindergarten teacher is the most energetic person on the planet. The middle school teacher, being a middle school teacher for a lot of years, you reflect that middle school mindset a little bit in your personality and your interactions with people. High school teachers tend to, they're subject area experts. Their content is what they serve. You ask a lot of kindergarten teachers, they teach They said, what do you teach? I teach kindergarten. I teach kindergartners. I serve them. I work with them. You ask a high school teacher what they teach. I teach English. I teach math. I teach that thing. So I think and I've bounced around and kind of seen a little bit of everything. So I try not to do it, but I've noticed myself over the past year and a half kind of falling into that role. Like, okay, I'm focused on my classroom, focused on my kids, focused on exactly my stuff I need to do. And we kind of put up walls and boxes and kind of box ourselves in. I think I need to do a better job of not just collaborating, because I'm happy to collaborate with anybody on anything, but it's that community building piece. Like, I think we could do a better job of that with our students and getting, however you can, planning, because this probably won't be a one-off. Going back into the next year, whenever that does happen, how do we mitigate this and have our students better prepared for the structure of learning in whatever way that's going to go forward?
So does that cover how you feel about your own learning?
Yeah. I need, in the computer science world, or are we talking about just in general? Because, man, I got a community for computer science. Like, I've got some people that I'm rallying around, and I'm pulling in and saying, hey, we've got this project coming up. Let's hop on a Zoom sometime soon. So that way we can maybe diagram this sentence together and figure out exactly what it's going to take to pull this thing apart. But yeah, I think it's that memory, right? It's that, okay, I know I was there and I know what that was like. How do we build something better kind of coming out of this?
So, yeah, I thank you. Like, as a former high school English teacher, what you said at the end really resonated with me about, you go into your classroom and you shut your door and you are, and sometimes you may be the only one teaching that, I was the only AP literature, the only AP language teacher in my building. And sometimes that's isolating just by what it is that you teach, So I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that will resonate with a lot of folks out there. Just what can we do more intentionally to build community with our colleagues? So we didn't talk about how people can reach you and find you, because you not only teach and coach esports, but you also have other gigs where you work for Google. So let's end with that and you sharing like how people can find you, please.
So in whatever randomness of life offers, in the process of things that kind of come about, I met some really cool people back in September, October. It's called the O'Brien Group. Erin O'Brien. Erin is a former Googler that has struck out on her own doing some design thinking, mainly in the private sector, but starting to get more into K-12 offerings. Over the past few months, I've been traveling the land, Texas, Virginia, Florida, repeatedly all over Georgia, doing some sessions on a program called Applied Digital Skills. Applied Digital Skills is a really cool platform Google's got out there. It takes, how to use Google Docs, but not only how to use Google Docs, but how to use Google Docs to make something. That something could be a resume. That something could be a cover letter. That something could be whatever. Formatting and all the headaches and hassles that you go through in dealing with those things and making sure that you know how to utilize them. So I've been on the road promoting some applied digital skills. We are starting some webinar sessions. Today is, I'm not sure when this is going to go up, but check o'briengroup.com to register, or follow me on the Twitter at itsleegreen, ITSLEEGREEN, and find out more there. And I'm happy to connect with you and bring some stuff into you. I want to throw this out there too. The applied digital skills trainings are 1,000% free to bring stuff into your district. We're going to start hosting we are going to start hosting a weekly webinar. Whoever wants to can hop in and sign up. The traditional way we've done it, though, is going out to school districts and, let's say, a director of technology or somebody in staff development will call us in, and they'll get teachers together, and we'll show them the platform and how it works and how to set it up for the kids and some of the different things that you can do with it. So, but yeah, be on the lookout for those. The sessions that we're doing online would be about an hour and walk you through that.
Awesome. So again, Lee, thank you so much. This was beautiful.
Absolutely.
And thank you for contributing to the series. And for those of you who are listening and or watching, again, this was put on by the Collaborative for Teaching and Learning. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us online. And yeah, we'll be doing a new episode very soon. So stay tuned for that.